What if you could make over $20,000 a month with just a high school education? I'm gonna go over some stuff that has worked for me in my business, and it might help you with your business. When I was growing up, it was pretty much understood that you needed to go to college. If you didn't go to college, you probably weren't gonna be successful, or you're gonna be working construction, or you're gonna be a janitor, or something like that. It was in the time when the internet was kind of coming of age, and everybody was going to be an engineer, or a software developer, and that was really the space that everyone wanted to be in. But in the last, I would say, decade, we've started to see things shifting a little bit and moving more towards home services and trades, things that you can do with your hands, because there's been a big lack of that over the past 10, 20, 30 years. So I'm gonna go over how I have built a multi-million-dollar business in the home service industry. Here are a few things that me and my family have done that have helped us be successful. After these bullet points, I'm gonna go into more detail on how you would actually do this. But here are some things to remember. I wanna start out with this one phrase that a great mentor of mine taught me: escape mediocrity. You don't want to be like everyone else. You want to be different. One of the things that we did is we moved across the country and started a new business. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to move across the country, but it means that you should be willing to move across the country. You should be willing to take risks and do things that other people aren't willing to do, and in many cases go against what other people are telling you to do so that you can pursue the dreams that you want. Next, we left a semi-successful business so that we had a chance to build a really successful business. Sometimes we get just successful enough to where we're comfortable and we're too scared to take the next leap because we've got enough, but we don't have excess. And so again, we're trying to escape mediocrity. So the next thing is more of a habit, but I spend very little time watching TV. I spend little time on my phone. I probably spend more time on YouTube and Instagram, but I also balance that. I probably spend less than 30 to 45 minutes on average a day on any type of entertainment like that. I'm busy. Now, I love conversations. I will sit and have a drink with someone and talk for hours, but I'm going to engage with people because that's gonna help me become smarter. It's gonna help me become more knowledgeable, and I'm not gonna be isolating myself in my room, just watching my favorite show. I'm gonna be out interacting with someone. Because I'm spending less time watching TV, I have more time to do the things that are necessary to win. So I'm gonna work more than the average person. I'm gonna work 50 plus hours. Now, there might come a time when I decide I'm gonna draw back a little bit, and there are seasons when I work less, but on average, I'm working over 50 hours a week because I want to accomplish more than the average person. So I'm going to work harder than the average person. All right, so the last bullet point that I want to go over is personal finances. Now, we're going to do a lot more about business and trying to grow your wealth and make more money. But while you're in the process of trying to make more money, it's important that you don't overextend yourself personally so that you can take risk and you can reinvest back into your business so that you can grow it. And we're gonna go over what that looks like in more detail, but the basic things would be: don't carry consumer debt, don't have credit card debt, don't have a big car payment. I've actually never personally had a car payment. My wife had a car payment when we got married. We carried that car payment for about a year and then we got rid of it. And so it gives you options and it gives you flexibility to make the choices that you want to make so that you can have the life you want rather than just worrying about the month or the week. You can think long-term, big picture. Where do I want to be in 5 years? And you can make those choices because you don't have all that debt tying you down. So if you're going to do those things, or maybe you're already doing some of those things and you still don't know what the next steps are. So maybe you're disciplined, you're managing your time and you're managing your personal finances, but you don't know how to get your business off the ground or really catch some traction so that you can make real money. So I'm going to break this down in detail. I'm going to use real numbers that I've used in my business and I'm gonna show you the results that I've had in my business. You can also check out one of our other videos that I've done about how I've doubled my business here in Colorado. But I'm gonna go in detail over the different areas of focus, and then we're gonna do future videos breaking down each one of those topics so that we can really dig into all the nuance and all the details that really matter. So I'm gonna actually go over some of my personal finances, and I'm gonna break down percentages that are actually on my profit and loss statement. So I'll refer to that as my P&L. And so one thing to keep in mind, we're gonna have a net profit at the bottom of your P&L, but also keep in mind that some of your salary is gonna be captured in the P&L. So I'll try to explain that as we go through. If you have questions about how to break down a P&L or a cash flow statement or any of that, make sure you leave a comment or message, and I'd be happy to explain more about that. All right, so we're gonna start off with my business. Now, this may vary a little bit depending on the type of business that you have, but it's not gonna vary a lot. Business is somewhat universal. Now, if you have a software business or a tech business, some of these examples may not be exactly the same, but you can use the principles in any business. So just keep that in mind. So you start with, let's just say 100%. All right, so that's what you have. You have $100, 100% of whatever you're working with, right? And so the first thing that you're gonna have in your business is, especially in a home service business, your cost of goods sold. So your cost of goods sold is what you use to get the project done. So in my business, it's a painting business. So whatever I use to actually fulfill the job is going to fall under the category of cost of goods sold. And so in my business, that's about 65% of the project. So that's gonna leave me with a 35% profit after the cost of goods sold. So that means that you have a gross profit of 35%. Now, keep in mind that percentage could go up a little bit. I'm playing with conservative numbers because I want to be really realistic in what's possible. I've had my gross profit as high as 45%. Once you get above 45%, you're probably in more a business where you're selling a cog or more of like a software or a service business where you're offering like a course or something like that. Most home service businesses are gonna have a cost of goods sold around 50%. All right, and I'm gonna go into more detail about how you can break down and lower some of your expenses when it comes to your labor and materials, which is ultimately your cost of goods sold. But next, you're gonna have marketing. And marketing is gonna vary some, but on average, we're looking at about 10%. You should be able to get it lower than that, but initially, when you're getting started, you're probably gonna spend a little bit more. Again, we'll go into more detail about what that looks like and how you can clean that number up and find the most effective ways to do marketing. If you have like a restaurant or something like that, marketing may fluctuate because once you get a reputation, that cost is gonna go down. And the same thing's true for a home service business. Once we get a reputation, that cost is gonna go down some, but it also depends on what you're selling. So if I'm selling a lawn service, if I'm selling like maintenance on someone's yard, well, I'm cutting that yard every other week or every week. So it's a lot of repetitive costs or charges. And so with a home service like painting, I may only paint a home once every 5 years or once every 10 years. So the cycle, the repetition of one customer, the customer lifetime value is going to be, maybe it might be the same, but the purchase is going to be one big purchase versus 100 small purchases. So keep that in mind. So again, the percentages should stay the same, but there are some nuances that are different that could change the arc of what your marketing looks like. All right, so far we have your cost of goods sold, which is typically going to be your labor and your material to get the job completed. And so that's going to put you at about 35% left in gross profit. And so then you're going to have a marketing cost, and that's going to be about 10%. So now that's going to bump it down to about 25%. Now your overhead, now this can capture a lot of different things in overhead, but you really want to work hard to minimize it. And so overhead is about 10%. You should be able to keep that closer to 5% or maybe even lower as you scale. Sometimes it gets a little bloated at the beginning because you have like softwares that are maybe a little bit more expensive and your revenue's a little lower. But as your revenue grows, your overhead should shrink a little bit, especially for like home service businesses, because you need to really work on systematizing and automating a lot of the things that you're doing. But we'll go into more detail about that. Adam here. We don't ask for any money, but if you want to help us out and support our mission, please subscribe and share with a friend. So we're at 25%. And then we're gonna have overhead. So we're gonna reduce the profit by another 10%, which is gonna leave you with your net profit. Your net profit is what's at the bottom of the P&L. It's at the bottom of the profit and loss. That's the profit of the business after everything else. And so that leaves you with 15%. So to break that down, we have cost of goods sold, which is gonna be 65%. And then I'm gonna add this on this little calculator to make sure I don't lie to you on the percentages. And so that's gonna leave you with 35%. And then we're gonna go into marketing, which is gonna reduce it another 10%, which is gonna take it down to 25. And then we're gonna take out the overhead, which is gonna drop it another 10%. So that leaves you with a net profit of 15%. So if you have $1 million business, that's gonna leave you with $150,000 free and clear at the bottom. And so if you have wrapped some of your salary, which you should, once you get your business established, you will pay yourself more or less as an employee of the company. And so some of your own salary will be accounted for in the overhead section of your P&L. And so if you are making, let's say $60,000, and then you have a profit of $150,000, you are now getting close to that $20,000 a month. So you're still about $30,000 short. So you're at $210,000. You can say, well, $1 million a year and I'm still not making $20,000 a month. That's right. It's difficult. It's not easy to make $20,000 a month, but it's very attainable. $1 million a month in revenue is in some ways difficult because it's kind of this big 7-figure scary number, but it's actually easier than most people think. And so it requires some attention to detail, it requires some planning, and it requires a lot of hard work, but it's very attainable. And so if you get your revenue to, $1.5 million, 2 million, you're easily making $20,000 a month in steady income. Here are some key things to focus on. I'm just gonna tell you how I did it. So when I got to Colorado, it was a new business and we were getting one thing set up and I was moving to the next. And then I realized after I got a few things set up that I had to go back and refine some of the things that I set up early on. So think of someone juggling balls, and every time you're touching it, you're adjusting it a little bit. So you're throwing it up and then you're catching the next one, you're making an adjustment, you're throwing it up, making an adjustment on the next one. Every time it gets in front of you, you're making little adjustments. And how you can do this in a productive way, or I should say how I've done it in a productive way, is by systematizing and automating. Those are two different things. Systematizing is when something comes across your plate, it's easy to see, it's easy to digest, and it's easy to see which metric or which knob you need to turn to make some adjustments. If every time something crosses your, in front of you, every time you touch one of those balls, if you have to pause and analyze it very deeply, then guess what's gonna happen? All the other balls are gonna fall. So you have to have a system in place to where when you catch that ball, you can easily look at it and say, oh, there's a little adjustment, and then you go to the next thing. Because if you spend too much time focusing on the one thing, everything else is gonna fall around it, and then that's when businesses fall apart. Let's talk about marketing. So marketing, you got some marketing that's working, but let's say you're spending 20% of your revenue on marketing, and you need to get it down to like 5 or 10%. So there's some adjustments that need to be made on that marketing. One of the things that you can do is you can just look at all the metrics. You can look at what's working well, what's not working working well. But you have to be able to do that relatively quickly. And when I say quickly, it's all relative. So if you have a weekend that you can dedicate to it, then that's great. But you probably won't have a week to dedicate to it. So what you'll probably need to do is you'll probably need to sit down, look at it, make some adjustments, and then see the reaction in the business after you make those adjustments. And then the next week or the next month, you make another adjustment. And maybe you realize pretty quickly that the adjustment that you made didn't work well. So maybe like the next day, maybe you up your marketing by $1,000 and you're getting terrible leads and you cut it off. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm wasting so much money and I don't have enough money to waste on that. So you can shorten the loop, the echo, the improvement loop. Words leaving me right now, but there's a cycle that things go through. Things go up and then you dissect it and then you go back, you refine it, and then you go up again. Ray Dalio talks a lot about this, and it's just this constant loop that things go on. And as things are going up, you're also going back a little bit, adjusting, maybe going down, going back up, going backwards, back down, going back up. So you're constantly doing that with every different aspect in your business. So you're doing that with your material. So maybe you got pricing from a supplier and you're like, man, this isn't great pricing, but I'm gonna show the supplier that we're gonna be a good customer and we're gonna buy a lot of crap. So we're gonna make sure that they like us. And so when I sit down to negotiate with them, they'll see that I'm a customer worth having and they're gonna give me better pricing. Same thing with your subs, with your labor. You can sit down and be like, hey, you may not make as much per job, but you're gonna make more for the whole year. And I'm gonna make sure that you always have work. Or we're gonna do XYZ that other companies don't do. So you always are looking for that value add. You're doing that when you're selling and you're doing that when you're hiring, because really hiring is just a different version of selling. And so you're always looking to improve the process. So you got material, you got your labor, you got your marketing, and then you got your overhead. So all four of those things, you're constantly adjusting to see what can I do to get the most out of this business without spending more money. So we've gone over some of the technical stuff, but how do we get the first job? How do we get the revenue coming in? So I'm gonna try to break that down. And again, we're gonna do some more videos that will go into some of the specific areas, but the general areas. We've covered the main areas on the profit and loss, but the goal is to get your revenue to $20,000 a month or above. And so I'm gonna break that down, and hopefully we'll get a little graph right here that'll show you some of the details that I'm gonna talk about as well. All right, so let's break some of this down. We're gonna do this backwards because we're dyslexic and that's how we do things. So I have some information here, so I'm gonna be looking over at my computer so I can make sure I get all these numbers right for us. We know what our profit is gonna be. We know our net profit is gonna be about 15%, or that's our goal, 15% or higher. And so if we wanna make $250,000, which is roughly just over $20,000 a month, we can do the math backwards. And so what that looks like is, I don't have my glasses, so sometimes it's a little harder for me to see. At some point, we're gonna have to figure out what an average job is. So an average job is gonna be, if we do 275 jobs, what is that cost gonna be? Because if every job is $1, then we've only made $275. But if our average job is, say, $6,000, now we're at $1.6 million, and 15% of that is now $250,000. So we just found our magic number. So you may not know the average job to start with, but you can figure it out. You can Google it, talk to GPT, you can talk to other people in the industry. So I'm assuming that you have some knowledge of the industry that you're going into. So you know if a paint job costs $1,000 or $10,000. And you may go, well, it's impossible to know because what if we do a small job or a big job? Again, we're talking about the average of a job. And so if you find that you're only doing small jobs, then you'll have to reduce your average and you'll have to do more jobs. So what you would want to do in that case, what I would do is I would actually adjust my marketing because I'm obviously not getting to the right audience. So now I'm going to adjust my audience so I can talk to customers who have bigger jobs. And so one thing to keep in mind, side note, bigger jobs are not always better. There's a sweet spot. You get kind of the middle majority. those customers tend to be a little easier to work for, in my experience. If you're working in the multi-million-dollar homes, you may get to charge more, but they're gonna require a lot more. So if you do apartments, they're gonna pay a lot less, but they're gonna care a lot less. And so you have to determine what you wanna do, what your business model is. But regardless, you still have to find that average job size. So let's say $6,000 is your average job size, okay? $6,000. So let's do the math backwards a little bit. So I know if I want to get to $250,000, I need to do about $1.65 million. So $1,650,000 per year if I'm going to reach a 15% profit of $250,000. All right, does that make sense? So you got, let's just say $1.6 million in revenue with an average job of $6,000 per job. That's gonna give me a net profit of about $250,000. And so now that you know how many jobs you need, you can now do the math of what you need to do each week to get there. So let's look at this little chart that I have. So if I'm going to do an average job is going to be $6,000 and I need to do $1.65 million a year, how does that break down per month? Well, that means that I'm going to need to do about $140,000. It's actually $137,500 per month, which is about 23 jobs to get that goal per month, which also means that I'm going to need to do 6 jobs a week at about $34,375. So you see how we're doing that math. So let's just start at the $34,375, and I'm going to do, that's 1 week. And so let's do that times 52. So that's actually going to put me a little bit over. That's going to put me at 1,800,000. So that's a little high because 52 is not really the right way to do that math. But if you go over here to the monthly number, so we're saying we got to do 32 jobs per month at $137,000. My dyslexic is making it hard for me to say these numbers out loud. So if I'm doing $136,500 per month, times that by 12, that puts me at $1,650,000. And 15% of that is just under $250,000 a year. And if you divide that by 12, that puts me right at $20,000 a month. So there's a couple other things that you have to consider when doing this. You have to consider, all right, how many jobs do I need to look at to get 23 jobs a month? So obviously every job you look at, you're not gonna get. So you have to figure out what your close rate is. And that's one of the things we're gonna break down in one of the other videos. And you need to know how to market and how to sell. And we're gonna break some of those things down in other videos as well. But this is to give you, honestly, give you a little hope that if you're looking, jump in class, maybe you wanna make more money, you wanna be able to do the vacations with your family that you've always wanted, you wanna be able to send your kids to that school, you wanna be able to help your parents out or buy that home that you've always wanted. There's a way to do that. And it's not as hard as you think in the sense that you don't have to be a genius to do it. You do have to work really hard. It is a lot of work. Doesn't matter what tools you have, it's a lot of work. And there's a way to do it by leveraging technology that makes it easier and more manageable. And in a lot of cases, what it did for me is it's not that it did save me time, but really what it did is it made it possible because I'm not the smartest and I'm not the most innovative, but I have the ability to learn and I'm willing to work harder than everyone else. And when I look around and see what other people are doing, I'll adopt the good things and I'll shed off the bad things. And so I'm gonna break down in more detail in the next 2 or 3, 4 videos some of these techniques that we use to grow business. So if you want to hear more about that, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. And also send me a DM on Instagram, leave a comment here on YouTube, and we'll do everything we can to help you be successful.